Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Fritz Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. I'm Josh Modell. On this week's episode, we've got a pair of songwriters with plenty in common, but who came up on opposite sides of the world. Sharon Van Etten and Nadia Reid. Now, Sharon Van Etten will be very familiar to Talkhouse listeners. We've been huge fans of her music from the very beginning and have followed her, as many of you have, through her early days of more spare guitar songs to the fully fleshed out music she's been making in the past few years. Her latest album was Van Etten's first to be written and recorded with a band, and that band has a name that it shares with her latest album, Sharon Van Etten and the Attachment Theory. Working out songs with her band has resulted in a looser, somewhat more experimental Sharon Van Etten, but it's still unmistakably her voice and vision, which is to say it's fantastic. Check it out. Today's other guest, as you'll hear, is a friend of Sharon's from New Zealand, Nadia Reid. Now, Reid has been making music for about a decade, and her latest album, called Enter Now Brightness, came out about a month ago, on the same date as Van Etten's new record, as a matter of fact. Though Reid is from New Zealand, you might hear bits of what could be described as Americana on her records, which are overarchingly gentle, subdued, and deep. Enter Now Brightness was recorded while Reid was pregnant with her second child, and these two talk a fair bit about motherhood in today's episode. Check out a little bit of Nadia Reid's Changed Unchained from Enter Now Brightness right here. In this chat, Van Etten and Reid talk about parenthood, including bringing your kids on tour, and Van Etten's son makes a brief appearance as well. They also get into how your band is truly like family, and who's given them great advice over the years. Enjoy.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to talk with you.
Oh, I'm so happy to talk to you. Happy release.
Oh, I know. It was so cool to see that we shared the auspicious day, the special Feb 7th. How does it feel for you?
You know, it's always kind of surreal, right? It's like time travel, and then you kind of you make it, and then you wait. Then you're in this domestic zone, so then it doesn't feel like you anymore. And then now you have to jump right back into it. I feel like every time I go back and return, it feels more and more psychedelic every time. I
know, like I put out my first record in 2015, and I don't know, 10 years feels quite a nice sort of number. Maybe this is a question for myself as well, but like, do you think it gets sort of easier or like, I suppose I love that you haven't kind of stayed in one, like, do you ever feel like these people kind of try to box you in? Like, obviously you started as a sort of with the guitar and the voice, and I feel like sort of journalists are sort of like so obsessed with like genre, and I feel like you're just like the master of not sort of repeating yourself.
Okay, does it get easier? No, I don't think it does. I think as I'm getting older, I know more what I like, who I like to work with, or different environments, and like how to set myself up to like creatively conducive environment. And also for the collaborative environment, like just surrounding yourself with good people so that it's easier to do what you want to do, but it doesn't necessarily get easier. It's more like you're just setting yourself up more for success, like in your own world, right? In your own orbit, as you learn how to do it in a way. But also I feel like sometimes the cards are just stacked against, anyone in this field anyway, because it's not like touring is easier, or, having people listen to an album is getting easier, or being away from home. Does that get easier? I mean, nothing gets easier, except I have conviction still in I love what I do. And now life is just more complicated. I'm still unwrapping a lot of it because I leave on Saturday for tour. Every time I go out on tour now, I have this sense of dread. Like, is my plane going to crash? Like, what the hell is going on out here? And with everything else going on in the world, I just feel like it's heavy. And I feel like something bad is going to happen when I'm gone. And once I'm out, like I'm doing it and it's fine, and I snap into that zone. But like leading up to going for tour this week, I've just been kind of feeling more dread than anything.
I'm leaving in 2 weeks, and I have that same feeling, and I get it before I go on stage as well. Like when I was back home in New Zealand in November, and I have a 1-year-old now, and she was 7 months at the time. So I traipsed her all the way back to New Zealand to do this sort of mad thing. And we did sort of 8 shows. And I swear every time before we'd go on stage, I would just be like, what are we doing? Like, and I love sort of, I read an article about just that, this sort of specific bond that you get with a band. And I'm coming up like 10, 11, 12 years with this same band. And I started doing this really cheesy thing with them last November. I think I might have found it on Instagram or something sort of cheesy like that. But we would do this stand in the circle, and we'd all put our hands in the middle and we'd say same team. And, just that feeling of like they've got, like we're carrying each other. But that sense of dread, I don't know if they get it as much. I seem to, but I suppose when you're sort of the singer and these are sort of like our own songs, I think that feeling of dread sort of follows me everywhere, really.
Well, it's amazing that you've had the same band for 10 to 12 years. Do they have families as well?
2 out of 3 have got young children. And, I met my drummer Joe when I was maybe 18, freshly 18. And my manager here in the UK, he says, we've got to get you a UK band. And I'm like, I guess practically yes, but I really love this approach with your new record, that the sort of the collective, which sometimes it feels kind of, I don't know how to honor them, and maybe in time I can figure out how to honor them. But I just love that it's such a unique connection that not everyone gets to experience.
And it is like family, like the kind of joke with naming my band The Attachment Theory was like, I was kind of late to having a band, and every time every record, it's been a different iteration of people. And, my touring band has been different, usually most of the time from like shows to recording. All those are different processes for me. But as I've learned how to have a band and kind of get to this place sonically, touring is just intense. It gets more intense, especially post-COVID. And I feel like people are making these choices that, these are lifestyle choices to decide to be a touring musician. They leave their friends and family behind, and then you become each other's family for like these really intense moments in time. And you have a sibling dynamic, and you create these connections that, it's as intense as family, but like in some ways, I feel like it's like the stakes are higher or something, because it's like you have these mega highs, but that's not every day, all day long. It's like for these really short, intense spurts. I think that can make anyone crazy.
Yeah.
So do you tend to, like, your touring band, were they on the new record, or did you?
Yeah, so I made it before we moved over to the UK. I made it sort of in fits and spurts, really, like over 2.5 years. Last record came out 2020, and I didn't get the sort of natural cycle of that album stretching its legs of, for me, everything sort of is like quite cyclical, like make a record, you tour it, and by the time you finish, I've only done it 4 times, but it sort of felt like by the time that touring cycle ended, I'd kind of written the songs through being on the road, or just, and I suppose like the lockdown was, I felt, we were all sort of in one place. I felt like I didn't really have much to say. And so I worked with Tom Healy from, Tom.
Yeah.
And he was the perfect person really to do this record with, because when we started, I only had sort of 4 or 5 songs, and he sort of was quite gentle in the way he sort of kept nudging me to keep writing. And I was so resistant to it. And then somehow over the 2.5 years, I sort of managed to cobble it together. I would bring the sort of melodies and the lyrics and the chords into the studio, and because we'd built up such a lovely trust and friendship, I felt quite comfortable just sort of hashing it out in the studio. You know, I've never actually felt like completely comfortable in a studio setting.
But you're also writing in the studio?
Not really. Like I had the sort of the lyrics and the melodies, because I get sort of weirdly like really sharp, awkward about it. You know, like the idea of co-writing is like quite terrifying. There's definitely only like one or two people I don't even know how it would look like.
It feels like you're on a bit of a blind date, and all ups and downs of just meeting someone. The more I started doing it, the more I like to start with a copy and a conversation and like, who are you and what are you about? Or talk on the phone the day before, so it's not like we're coming in cold. Having like a half-finished song in my back pocket in case like a spark doesn't happen. I had a session with Nick Lowe, like, no pressure. And I was very pregnant. And it was also very late after like missing a train. And when the second one came, I couldn't fit on it. It was like a rush hour thing. And I was like, how am I going to do this? I'm either going to walk and be late or take a car and be late. And I was wearing a sweater dress. And I remember being very sweaty, very pregnant, and very late. And he was waiting with my publisher at the time, and they were at the coffee shop waiting on me, just like getting my barrage of texts. And so I did not set myself up for success on this day. And we have to go to my studio, which at the time was in Dumbo in Brooklyn. And it was like in the downstairs of this space called Salt Mines, an affordable suite kind of practice space type place. But it's like, if you like go on tour and come back, there's like new walls and they keep like building out these rooms. And like one time there was like a dumpster in the hallway, and another time they had just put an exhaust from a restaurant that just opened up. And like, you just would never know what you get, but there's like all these strange smells. But, and you go into my room and you close the door, and I'm just kind of in this little box, the little window, with an HVAC outside the window, and it's this refined man in a suit standing there. And I was so shaken that we just ended up talking for like an hour or two, and he could tell right off the bat that nothing was going to happen. But in this moment, he talked about narrative and like just like what our processes are in writing. And so that ended up, just sparking a conversation of how you start lyrics and what you think about and visualization and like imagining you're the character and like walk me through what's happening. And it was that week that I started writing 17. And I was thinking about that neighborhood, and I was thinking about walking around Brooklyn, and it all kind of stemmed from this conversation about visualization and narrative and like, what does the road feel like? What does the air feel like? What do you feel like? And I try to take those moments as like, okay, it may not be fruitful in the sense that we didn't write like a hit song together, but like I gleaned from that, just like sharpened a knife and put it back in my tool belt. It was like, all right, I'm gonna take something from it, even though I also feel like a little bit of a fool.
I love that.
But yeah, I think it's hit or miss. It can be awkward. It can be fun. It can feel natural. It can feel forced. I've also been in a session in Nashville where this guy had like 5 writing sessions already that day. And he was like some, top of the charts guy that my publisher wanted me to meet. And I could just tell he was tired. I was like, I don't think you're having fun. I was like, this just feels like a total drag, like walking in the door. And I felt for him. And so we kind of just called it early. I was like, I think you're just tired. He's like, I am. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go now. He's like, okay. But writing in the studio is like completely different feeling when it's like, I feel more pressure in those moments of like, and now I have to get this done because I have this time, and they're documenting this.
Did you find when you were pregnant, like, did that change? This is a big question. How did it change your approach, your perspective on your career?
I mean, I just you're having a kid, you're just like, well, I have no idea what's happening on the other side of this. I had told my previous touring band that I was taking a break to go back to school. I'd gotten an acting job, so then I had to defer my enrollment. And when I finally got to go to school, I went back pregnant. And then all of a sudden, I'm just like, what is happening? That all happened within like a year.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any expectations. I was like, well, I'm going to see what this does to me. And then I'm sure I'll get to a creative space again. But I was also very, very ready to be in that bubble for a while. And my partner and I talked about it, and he was like, just, be honest with me when you don't want to be in the bubble anymore, and we'll figure that out, because he had to go back to work after like a few weeks or something. And I still remember him leaving, being like, wait, you're going to leave me alone with this thing? Seriously? I have no idea what I'm doing. But I feel like every step of the way, it's more just like, well, let me do this. And then I'll get to a point where I'll know I want to do something else, but I'm not, it took me a minute. So like my son was born in 2017. And then I think I was writing in all those like little short pockets of time. And then I made a record by 2019. But then the whole time I didn't know I was writing. I was writing, not knowing it was for a record, but I was, it was a lot of meditations on just being a mom, which I'm sure you found those pockets of time, right? I mean, I'm sure with 2, it's a little different now.
Especially because the little one, she sort of decided she was going to be...
How old is she?
She's about to be 1. I guess it's sort of a polite way of saying that she wasn't sort of planned. But I love having both of them. And I'm still shaking this off, like this idea that, you can't have both, that and I think this comes from sort of my own upbringing and my mum's sort of experience, but I had this sort of negative association around becoming a mum and having a creative career that it will ruin it, and I suppose when I realized, because I've always been quite maternal, but I remember when I met my husband, I remember saying to him, like, if you're going to make me well, not him, but like, if I have to choose, like, I would choose music. And so I think then when I had my first girl, this sort of aesthetic sharpening, like joy and everything sort of rose to the top. And I felt like deeply driven. And that feeling hasn't gone away, and, I've sort of kept myself quite busy over the last 3.5 years, and toured pregnant and made a record. And I suppose it's sort of a way of kind of like not proving that I can do it, but I've managed it, and it's sort of it's kind of deepened me and added to me. But I sort of, part of me just sort of waiting for the curtain to drop or something. But I think having a partner that sort of, when I have these moments of dread or of like guilt or doubt, that he's quite steady, like he's quite, I think that's kind of key. Someone that's sort of quite, steady, that can kind of just remind me, when I was about to go out to New Zealand, like thinking it was an insane idea to take the baby on tour, that, he sort of said, well, this is what you do. And she was fine. And it was fine. But it's a ride. And I keep reminding myself, like, there's no rule book.
You're editing the textbook. You know what I mean? I feel like when you have someone that also wants to help you make it happen, also, they always say kids are very resilient, and like we create the normal. I think our parents' generation, that was a time where like the mother gave up everything to raise kids. My mom was a painter, and she went from art to art history to history. raised 5 kids, was home for 15 years, still somehow went to night school. And by the time I was in junior high, she got a teaching job. I think about that because like the years that I didn't understand what she was doing and like the teenage resentment I felt because we moved for my mom's job. I resent like that angsty kid, and I was just like, I had no idea the kind of work she was doing. I can't imagine having 5 kids. I can't imagine, like, she was so present. I don't even remember her hardly going to school, and we all still had dinner together. Different times, different expectations, but I also saw my dad support her in that, you know, like, we'll figure this out at some point. Did your mom have to give up a career when she had kids?
I was basically a love child of 2 people that were very not compatible. And my dad was like a kid, you know, he was 19. And so I was born into this sort of tough circumstances anyway. But I do have this sense that I'm living out a life now that she would have really quite wanted, you know, and possibly could have, you know, like she gave me the gift of music, you know, like despite the sort of the things that weren't as they could have been. I suppose when I first had my daughter, I wrote this Carl Jung quote, and I'm only sort of scratching the surface with his work, but it's a quote that says, like, the greatest burden a child can carry is the unlived life of its parent. And it's kind of still remains kind of my mantra when it comes to the guilt that sometimes I feel about dragging my babies around the place or being apart from my 3-year-old. Is that like the best thing I can do for her or for them is to live, you know, the most fulfilled life I can. I think like kids want happy parents or fulfilled, present parents. So I think being a single mum would be devastatingly hard.
Absolutely.
Which is what she was. And so I think becoming a mum has really sort of softened me, and a lot of my sort of anger and angst from when I was in my 20s has softened into sort of this enormous like empathy, which is a nice place to be.
Are your kids coming for the upcoming tour at all?
So the little one's coming with me, and my sister comes over from New Zealand. She's my dad's got 2 younger kids, so she's 25. So we call her our Gen Z. And the band love her and sort of tease her and stuff. But so she'll come with the baby, and then the big girl stays with dad. I feel like I've been gifted 2 little kids that are quite like they get it, you know. Like they're quite. Have you brought your son on the road, or does he prefer to sort of?
Well, it changes. Like he came on a big part of the tour in like 19 when that came out. The record that came after that was in like 22. So like it was a big jump. And he couldn't come to all of it because he was also in school.
Yeah.
But, you know, the band are like his aunts and uncles, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of turns it into just like visiting relatives or something, you know, not so much seeing mom at work, but it's more of reconnecting with like some of his favorite people. And now he's turning 8, which is crazy. And so like I'll ask him, you know, now it's more about weighing his options and like what he'll miss out on, because now he's like a free thinker and he has a social life. And you know, it's like, well, do you want to stay with grandma? Like, do you want grandma to come look out for you, or do you want to pop in at all? You know, my husband is my manager, so it's like, this is when I go, this is when dad has to go. And so you can come with dad during this time, but you'll still have to like keep up on your schoolwork. We'll have to teach you some things about the places we're going. And, you know, and this is what's happening at school while if you choose to come. And so he'll weigh his options. Like he didn't come on one trip with me because he had a basketball game he didn't want to miss. And, but he's going to come out for part of the upcoming tour, and he gets to see Paris, and he gets to see like Amsterdam and Antwerp and London. And he'll get to see a couple of my friends and meet their kids for the first time. And so I think it's just a way for him to feel some sense of this is normal to some people. Like meeting up in Amsterdam and going for a boat ride. Like, why not?
Yeah.
So just, and, and as you get older, it's like Torah's different for as like parents. And speaking of, you want to say hi? You say hi real quick? I'm talking to my friend Nadia. It just came out with a new record on the same day.
Oh, hello. Oh, nice to meet you.
You're in Manchester, right?
Manchester, yeah.
I was just telling her about do you like being on tour? Yeah. Yeah? Yeah, she has 2 kids. Oh. You know how old they are? How? Is it like 3.5 and 1? Is that right?
Babies.
What do you recommend? Do you recommend that kids go on tour? Or what do you think? Tour versus going to school? Tour.
Sold. Oh.
But I gotta finish this up. But I also need you to practice piano before dinner. So when I get back. Okay, so it's almost 5 o'clock right now. Can you come back at 6? He's a negotiator. All right, but I got to finish this really quick, okay? Okay. It's always a balance.
Yeah. Did you have people that you looked up to, like that were mums and just on the road?
I didn't know that many parents. I feel like I met My Brightest Diamond and Low.
Yeah.
Were 2 bands that figured it out, and had the kids in the van or just like toured around school at when they got to a certain age, and also see Wilco doing it now that his kids are like in his band. It's and there's just so many different ways to do it. I mean, even my publicist, like she has 2 kids and her husband's a touring musician and a producer. And like, I just feel like you have the right partnership, you can figure it out. Like one of the things that Mimi from Low said to me, I got to do an interview with her even before I had a kid, when I was just contemplating what being a mother would be like on the road. And she said, everyone that puts their hands out becomes your family. And your family just keeps growing. And those friends whose roles evolve, they present themselves to you. They want to be a part of your life, and they want to see your changes as much as like live up to what, being like a friend and family member is, and I think it's that message of community that, I think we're all trying to thrive in and help sustain. And like the harder the world feels, the more I feel like we have to be joyful and embrace our community and like start there,
Bless her. She said, on tour, the baby is everybody's baby, or something to that effect.
And I feel like you surrounding yourself with people that love you and just want the best for you and they want to support you. And sometimes that feeling can be overwhelming, but, I think you're just all the new songs that I've heard, which are beautiful, by the way. And I'm sorry we didn't get to dig in more to the album, but it's just, I just hear all this light and reflection. And I know it's a lot of self-discovery. I know it's also your second kid, not your first. So I think not that you figure anything out after one, but you just sound so confident. And your voice is so beautiful and crystal clear. And there's just a wisdom that I think is expanded from your last record. And I hope that I'm sure that you're very proud of it.
Oh, thank you. You're one of my heroes, and I remember when we opened for you in that big theatre in Auckland, I remember you said something about your dressing room door was always open or something. And I just found that such a generous and sort of beautiful thing to say. I just found you so, such a generous spirit. And I think that left an impact on me.
Well, any door of mine is always open, including the bathroom door these days. But no,
I love it.
I admire you, and I think your music is beautiful, and happy release.
You too.
And I hope that we find each other again out there. I know we're doing parallel tours and stuff, but if we ever find each other in the same city, let's have a coffee or something.
We'll have a cup of Yorkshire Gold in Manchester.
some clotted cream.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be nice to see you in the flesh again. It was a really special show and often.
Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to Sharon Van Etten and Nadia Reid for chatting. If you liked what you heard, check out all the great stuff at talkhouse.com and in the Talkhouse Podcast Network. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme is composed and performed by The Range. See you next time.